Alright guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. For the second year in a row, OpTic takes us place last place at the event before the World Championship. Is there any chance they can recover this one? Because lots of talk from the OpTic guys last night, especially after this mega defeat from Dashy from Kenny, especially on what exactly is going on, how they have any chance of fixing it over the next couple of weeks, because that loss to Miami was not what they were looking for. The tournament still concludes, however, over the next couple of days. The World Championship 8 teams have been locked in over the last day or so. Can Toronto make the losers bracket run that OpTic couldn't? Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. First of all, we've got to talk about the series that we didn't quite get to last night because it was a late one. Subliners played Vegas. This was for Vegas a massive deal, obviously, right? Because look, Los Angeles Guerrillas are still in the winners bracket, but had Vegas got here to top 6, they'd have got to 180 points. That would have left Guerrillas needing at least one more win in the tournament. There was a chance here for Vegas, and there are questions, I guess, on this team, given the fact that they've definitely improved lately. Like, it wasn't, an absolute bloodbath here. New York win the game 1. They then actually clutch up and win the game 2 as well. Vegas then win the control, and then it goes to a game 4 hardpoint, which eventually the Subliners close out and win. Simp had a great performance here as well. I feel like his individual game, especially since the start of the year, there was lots of concerns, questions about Simp, and sure, they've made roster changes this season, the Subliners, and they've not, at least as of yet, won the events they did last year. Does that mean their changes were necessarily bad? I mean, you can look at it that way, obviously, but to be fair, has Priestahh been good for Boston this year? No. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Would they have been better with Priestahh this year than Sib? Maybe there's an argument to say yes, given what they did last year, but I think just generally, Skyz and Kiers, and even HyDra, to be fair, have just been not quite as good this year as they were last year. HyDra's still very good, but, he's not the absolute unbelievable hard carry every single series that he was last year, maybe, and still he kind of is most of the time. Anyway, Subliners win the game 2. They lose the control because Nero goes nuclear here, and honestly, I think for Nero, this is a question what Vegas will try and do, if anything, for next season to hold on to this guy, just because, let's be real, this guy's been unbelievable. 40 kills in the control, well over 7,000 damage, and when it's on one man to take over, usually Nero's the guy doing it. Eventually, though, they lose the series, they lose the ReeaL hardpoint, and that spells the end of their hopes for the World Championship qualification this year. So after all is said and done, Subliners advance, and Vegas go home after being one round away from, if they'd won their first round game against the Seattle Surge, which they should have won. They were up 5-3 the game 5. Had they won that, they would, they'd have been there, but they didn't in the end, so they come top 8, and that's it for them this season, unfortunately, for the Vegas Legion. Look, they put together a good run, and there have been questions as a result, should the team stick it out, right? Because the World Championship is not, they can't go to the champs, and obviously in an ideal world, they would sign other players, I guess some teams that are currently on teams that are going to be at the World Championship, but also other teams, I'm sure, are looking at guys like Nero, potentially trying to get him onto their roster. Obviously, he was on Boston for some time, won a lot of series with them, then he knocked them out of the tournament effectively just yesterday before then losing later in the day to the Subliners. So EasyMac reckons maybe actually they could stick it out. They've got a young team, they've got some experience, pre-season together, they could think about it. So I think, honestly, a lot of these teams, what they may do is say, you know what, maybe it's not the worst idea ever to stick it out going into the Esports World Cup in the middle of August, and then if that goes badly, then blow it up or something, which I think is still definitely possible given the situation right now. Of course, they could put the players on 2-week contracts or something like that to make that work. Difficult for Tej, of course. Ravens going out of the tournament yesterday, didn't have his best series, and it's just tough for Carolina. As I said yesterday, I think they quite possibly are on LAN at least one of the best state teams in the game, but they just couldn't deliver that when it mattered, and online was just so important again this year, certainly for the teams at the bottom of the standings. Boston, of course, are gone, so what do we do with them? I don't even know, to be honest, what Boston do. I guess this is a question I had a while ago. How many of the current team do you keep on that roster? Because it's 2 absolute maximum, probably 1, maybe 0, let's be real. They could just completely go from scratch here. I guess that's the question, though, given the Esports World Cup is a thing, what do you do for that? Do you, stick out your roster? Maybe you might be forced to stick out your roster, given the roster rules that we think may or may not be true for that Esports World Cup, and then after that, then you can blow it up, given the fact that Probably after the Esports World Cup, there will be more roster changes, which will allow for other options to be available. Who even knows? But look, Boston have money. They've just not executed at all well over the last couple of years. One thing I wanted to mention as well, though, was actually on the setup here. This was the beef yesterday that we saw between Scrap and Clay. But this is the venue setup, right? They've got the, I mean, this is a great setup for a local LAN style event with no fans. This is exactly how it should be done. And honestly, as I said the other day, this is arguably how it should be done, even with fans. Just put this in the center of the arena and have all the fans around it in a circle in a stadium tile format. This is what Slasher says. It would be so nice if this setup was used for league matches and then the majors obviously played in front of fans. And Hitch is like, oh my god, I can't believe you're talking about a LAN league. Surely we're not going to be doing that one. But look, it's obviously possible that they could run something like this. I mean, imagine all the online qualifiers were actually LAN qualifiers and they happened in a setting like this. It would be great. It would be so much better. You could even sell some tickets to fans, even if there's not that many. You could have some sort of rotating thing. People could come in and stand around and watch. I don't know. You could make it better than it is, obviously. And this is Adam who says, from Toronto's side, hey COD League, if you want to move the online qualifiers to this kind of LAN format with a small studio audience, let me know. This format rocks for storytelling and engagement. We are willing to run it out of Toronto, at Daniel Say, who's actually there right now in Burbank at the event. Now look, running it out of Toronto is a bit of a challenge because the players would have to move there. Let's be real, it ain't happening. If you're going to do this, though, do it in Dallas. Why not? The teams are based there anyway. Obviously, the Toronto guys are going to say, oh, come to Toronto, we'll do it here, so we don't have to relocate. And obviously, if they were to say, look, we're going to run this in Dallas, then Toronto would be like, you know, we've kind of got our facility here, we've, you know, housing our boys over here. Do we really want to do that? Probably not, but, you know, maybe it's for the best of the league. So there's a few things to say on that, I'm sure, over the coming days, but let's talk about this OpTic series again, because, wow, what a defeat this was. We called it, right? We called it. I mean, it was either going to be an OpTic 3-0 dominant showing, or it was going to be Miami somehow winning in 5, and that's what they do. Another 2 search and destroy losses. Dashy honestly played really well this series, but Pred had another bit of a stinker here, to be fair. And honestly, Pred's search and destroy KD kind of blows the mind, really, because at the start of the season, even last year, let's say Pred last year, he was a monster in search. Like, so much damage, so much impact, first bloods, clutches, you know, 1.2s, all this stuff. In the early stages of this season, Pred had 1.2s, 1.1s, you know, 1.05, whatever. That was his pretty standard search and destroy KD. It was solid, it was up there, and obviously there were questions this year how Pred would work with Shotzzy, like how that duo is going to work, because last year Pred, as I say, was like the do-it-all entry SMG and the guy to close out the rounds because nobody else could get any kills on that Seattle search team last year in search and destroy. But Shotzzy's also kind of that first blood guy, so how's Pred going to fit in? The first few stages, no problems. This stage, Pred had something like a 0.7 in search and destroy, which is obviously woeful, and it was just the decision making, really. I think we talked about it last night when we actually recapped the series, but a few moments where, you know, he just blacked out or made a play, just threw away his life, didn't read something properly, and it just, you know, we talked about it before, it's the confidence thing, right? If Pred's confident that he's going to make the right play, I feel like he often does, but if he gets in a situation where he's a bit concerned, and this is also maybe one of the byproducts of playing an OpTic, right? The pressure is absolutely on. I mean, especially this year, the World Championship is in Dallas. It's meant to be OpTic's time to finally get back to the top for the first time since 2017. You know, the storylines were written, especially after Major 3, about how that was possibly going to be the case. All of a sudden, the team is struggling somewhat. Pred is obviously feeling the heat, maybe heat that you don't feel when you're on the Seattle Surge. And then, you know, he knows all the eyes are on him, everyone's watching his play, he's in a 1v1 clutch, and, you know, the whole world's watching what he's going to do, and tends to make more mistakes than we might otherwise have expected. But, yeah, his job off this stage was remarkable. And last year as well, right, OpTic, of course, they didn't come close really to winning the World Championship last year, losing to Seattle in the end, getting 1v3'd by Sib on that Mikado. But last year they were also top 12 at the Major 5, as it was in Toronto. That was obviously a different team, and that time they were undefeated in the qualifiers before, I think, losing to Florida round 1, and then losing, I think, to Thieves maybe in the losers bracket to go out of the tournament. So that was OpTic last year, top 12 of the tournament before champs. It's happened now. There's only ever been one world champion, which is Evil Geniuses, which is considered to be, you know, maybe people say the flukiest or whatever. Like, if you ran that tournament in mentioned 2018 100 times. How many times would EG win? Maybe more than you might expect. I think they're actually better than people maybe give them credit for. But, still, it was one of the upset World Championship wins. They, to be fair, EG were top 2 in Seattle, I think, a couple of events before when they lost to Rise Nation in the finals. Then the next event after that, though, they got slammed. Then they went to champs and won it all. So it has happened. It's just very rare that it happens, right? That a team that wins the World Championship isn't right up there in the conversation at just the events just before that. So Dashy responds to it, right? Look, he played well in that series, but as he says, can't even describe it. GG's Miami, gotta lock it in for champs in a couple of weeks. So it's just tough to see, right? Because there's no more online games. Their practice is still going to be there, but also the other thing about practice is that 4 of the teams that aren't at the World Championship, they're going to stop scrimming, right? Like, they're going to be done with the game. They're going to head off to Cancun for a couple of weeks, and then they'll be back in due course, I imagine. And maybe they'll be practicing again going into the Esports World Cup. But to be honest, those teams will probably not really practice the game. They're not going to be still grinding scrims over the next couple of weeks. So if you're OpTic, you've got 7 other teams to practice against. Obviously, one of them you're going to play in the first round, so you're not going to want to play them. So, the quality, the level of practice, the quantity of practice might not necessarily quite be where OpTic needed. And of course, we also understand that their practice over the last couple of weeks anyway has not exactly been great. And yes, Kenny says, not even on the hill to end a hard point. GG's Miami need to lock in for champs. Nothing from Pred yet, nothing from Shotzzy yet. As Kenny says, this is the mood right now. And honestly, kind of sums it up across the board, right? Shotzzy just drinking, thinking what is going on. Dashy looking kind of checked out. Pred's obviously mind blown. And Kenny, what do you even want to say about that? So, yeah, not a great team environment. And I think the clear indication here is that the vibes or some sort of the internal dynamics in terms of whether they even like each other anymore, that type of stuff, is actually, valid or not. Because as FormaL says, it's crazy how fast your whole environment changes from a loser's run to winning Major 3 to this. Feels so bad for the COD team. And look, it happens. It can happen. And I think that OpTic as an organization, while the highs when you're on OpTic are absolutely the best, when things aren't going so well, it can potentially exacerbate some of these issues where, because there's so much pressure and the fans are all on your neck and everything, I'm not sure it necessarily helps the players get to where they need to be. But that's just, that's how it is, right? You play for OpTic. This is what you expect to occur, and, you reap the benefits, and also you've got to get through difficult times such as this. But this is the point from FormaL. Crazy how fast your whole environment changes, which kind of implies the team dynamics are not exactly on point as they would like to be. Feels to me, and there's no way that this is just, complacency or whatever. And even Scump mentioned this when they lost to Boston or whatever last weekend, that he feels like there's been a breakdown of trust, a breakdown in communication. They don't trust each other as teammates anymore. It's quite possible that at least a couple of the guys have differing opinions on the way that they want or, the play in the game at the moment. And it's incredible how quickly this seems to have developed. And of course, it's somewhat speculation, but when you see results like this, 12 search and destroy losses in a row, 1 away from the CDL record of 13 in a row, which I think was set by Boston, was it not, earlier on this? 12 searches in a row for OpTic. Like, that is mind-blowing to even think about. It can't just be like, oh, they got complacent after winning the major and now they're not trying. Like, there's clearly more to it than that. And, obviously people are speculating, is Kenny seeing eye to eye with Pred right now on certain things? We know that earlier in the season, even when they were good, they were not butting heads exactly, because it's just, at times it feels like healthy teamwork when someone says something about a play, the other guy says, no, it was your fault. They have the back and forth, they resolve it, they move on. But, there's an argument, has that happened? I don't really know, because there's just no way that there isn't more to it than meets the eye. Like, clearly behind the scenes, things cannot be sunshine and rainbows, and to such an extent that I've seen OpTic fans say, you know what it's time for? Get Pred on the bench, and we're bringing in Scump. Scump's coming back into the roster for the World Championship, which, I don't even think they can necessarily do, given the roster lock and all this stuff. But, would it even help them? Obviously, people are now talking about HyDra for next year and all these other conversations that are being had. ReeaL and the Heretics are buzzing with their win. Yes, it was a Game 5 round 11, but it's just, again, unacceptable ways to lose for OpTic. Pred specifically didn't have the greatest plays. I can't imagine that Kenny's especially happy about it. And I'm sure that, Pred knows he's not playing well. He did apologize to the fans after their performance a couple of weekends ago, saying, unacceptable from me. I'm going to turn it around. But, it hasn't happened yet. And will it happen at the end of the season? That is a matter for debate. Los Angeles Grillers, by the way, they are going to go to the World Championship because of the results results yesterday. They're now at 170. Miami are at 170. The other teams are locked in. So the teams that won't be there, Boston, Legion, Ravens, and Rocker. Those are your 4. They won't be at the World Championship, but this is the bracket of today. These are the games. Ultra Miami, FaZe Surge. Could there be an upset there? I don't know, but Ultra want to continue making the losers bracket run. They should beat Miami, but honestly, who knows? Then you've got Gorillas Thieves. Winner of that gets top 3. That's a mega result. Gorillas historically have got, the dubs in these series, but I feel like Thieves are probably playing the slightly better COD right now, and then Subliners are awaiting in the losers bracket in what is going to be a remarkable day of COD. So very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.